Hey guys, tonight we step into the flickering torchlight of a Roman aristocrat's villa, where the air is thick with spiced wine, sweat, and the low hum of desire. You're not a guest here. You're a fly on the mosaic wall, watching as silk-draped bodies recline on couches, their fingers tracing the rims of golden cups. A slave kneels to refill your goblet, eyes downcast, because in this world, even a glance can be a transgression. And let's be real, you probably wouldn't survive this party. Not because of poison, though, sure, that's a risk, but because the rules of Roman pleasure were a minefield. One wrong move, one misread social cue, and you're not just embarrassed, you're ruined. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Where are you listening from tonight? Drop a comment with your city and local time. I love imagining you all curled up in bed, half asleep but too curious to tap out yet. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first thing you notice? The smell. Frankincense curls from bronze censers, masking the musk of bodies pressed too close. A lyre plucks somewhere in the shadows, but the real music is the murmur of voices, laughter, whispers, the occasional moan swallowed by a mouthful of wine. You're in the triclinium, the dining room where Rome's elite blur the lines between feast and flesh. Here's a mainstream fact to ground us: these parties weren't just about sex. They were about power. Who you touched, who you let touch you, it all mapped onto Rome's rigid social ladder. A senator's wife might flirt with a gladiator, but if she actually took him to bed? Scandal. Suicide. Maybe a conveniently timed exile. But the quirky tidbit? Some hosts hired professional partygoers, called scurry, to flirt, dance, and encourage guests into activities. Think of them as ancient Roman hype men, but with fewer clothes and more ulterior motives. Historians still argue whether the infamous Bacchanalia, wild rites dedicated to Bacchus, god of wine, were truly as debauched as Senate decrees claimed. Spoiler, they definitely banned them in 186 BCE, so draw your own conclusions. And then there's the food. Not just grapes and olives, but dishes designed to arouse. Oysters, obviously. But also garum, a fermented fish sauce so pungent it'd make your eyes water, and, allegedly, your libido roar. You reach for a fig, only to freeze. Across the room, a senator's fingers are tangled in the curls of someone very not his wife. His gaze flicks to you. Oops. The senator's stare lingers just a second too long, long enough for you to realize you've already broken rule number 1 of a Roman sex party: don't be memorable. But let's back up. Because before the touching, before the moaning, before the inevitable political scandal, there's an invisible script governing every interaction tonight. And if you think modern dating is complicated, honey, you crumble under the weight of Roman decorum. First, the hierarchy. You're not just a body in this room, you're a rank body. Senators recline on the finest couches, draped in Tyrian purple dyed with actual sea snail mucus, because nothing says I'm important like wearing mollusk juice. Equites, Rome's wealthy middle class, hover nearby, close enough to watch but not participate unless invited. And then there's the servi, enslaved men and women who weave through the party like living furniture, refilling cups, adjusting robes, and yes, fulfilling requests. Here's your mainstream fact: Roman sexuality wasn't about orientation, a concept they find baffling, but about dominance. A freeborn Roman man could penetrate anyone of lower status, male, female, enslaved, and still be respectable. But if he enjoyed being penetrated? Scandal. Hence Emperor Nero's very creative solution: he married a freedman named Pythagoras, and played the bride. Cue collective aristocratic gasping. Now for the quirky tidbit: some hosts issue tessera, small tokens engraved with erotic positions, to guide guests. Think of them as ancient Roman Kama Sutra flashcards. Historians still argue whether these were party favors, icebreakers, or just really elaborate flexes about how much sex the host was having. And then there's the gaze. Eye contact isn't just flirting here, it's negotiation. A lingering look from a social superior is an invitation. From an equal, a challenge. From someone beneath you? Dangerous. You catch a noblewoman's slave stealing a glance at you, oh no, and her mistress notices. The slap rings out before you even process it. Yikes. Meanwhile, a poet in the corner is drunkenly reciting verses comparing someone's ahem sword to Mount Vesuvius. Classy. The slap still echoes in your ears as the lyre music swells louder. Someone's trying very hard to pretend that didn't just happen. But before you can process the brutality, the room shifts. The senator from earlier snaps his fingers, and suddenly, oh gods! A naked man bursts through a curtain of rose petals, his oiled skin gleaming in the lamplight. He's wearing nothing except a crown of ivy and a strategically placed fig leaf, which, let's be honest, is doing zero actual covering. The crowd erupts in cheers. This isn't just some random exhibitionist. This is Priapus incarnate. Or at least, that's the bit. Here's your mainstream fact: Romans loved blending religion and raunch. Priapus, the god of vigorous fertility, was basically a meme carved into garden statues, his endowment comically exaggerated to ward off thieves, and, presumably, to make guests giggle. But tonight? He's live entertainment. The actor gyrates toward the senator's wife, who fans herself dramatically, but notice how her husband's grip tightens on his cup. This is the Roman sex party chessboard. Every move is power. Every moan is politics. Quirky tidbit? Some parties featured spintree, bronze tokens with erotic numerals used to assign partners or acts. Think sexual bingo, but with more togas and fewer free spaces. Historians still argue whether these were real party tools or just ancient brothel marketing. And then, oh no, the god reaches for you. Do you? I'll play along and risk offending someone important? B. Accidentally knock over a wine jug as a distraction? C. Realize you never learned the safe word in Latin? Time's up. His hand grazes your thigh. And a trumpet blares. The doors fly open. The Emperor's personal guards just walked in. The room freezes, wine cups hover mid-sip, hands jerk back from under tunics. Even the oil Priapus actor suddenly finds religion and covers himself with a nearby platter. Because those scarlet cloaks and gilded helmets can only mean one thing. The Emperor is bored tonight. And when the Emperor is bored, private parties become imperial entertainment. The guards part like a curtain, and there he is, Caligula himself, draped in a silk tunic so thin it's basically court-ordered indecency. His grin is all teeth. Don't stop on my account, he purrs, but the command hangs in the air like a threat. Here's your mainstream fact: Caligula didn't invent using sex as political terror, but he perfected it. He'd force senators to watch him pleasure their wives, then humiliate them with detailed reviews in the Senate the next morning. One poor consul reportedly got demoted for having a wife who was as enthusiastic as a corpse. Ouch. Quirky tidbit? The emperor allegedly kept a mini tablet of Rome's elite matrons, ranked by performance. Historians still argue whether this was real or just really effective propaganda to explain why he kept cuckolding half the government. Back to the party, Caligula's gaze lands on you. Oh. A new plaything, he croons, beckoning with one jewel finger. Your stomach drops. This is not the kind of attention you want. But before you can react, a slave trips, or was that a shove, spilling an amphora of garum at the emperor's feet. The reek of fermented fish guts floods the room. Caligula's nose wrinkles. Disgusting, he snaps, but he's already turning toward the door. The smell ruined his mood. As the guards scramble after him, the host sinks to his knees, pale. That slave just saved everyone's lives. Too bad they'll be crucified by dawn. The moment the emperor's footsteps fade, the room exhales, collectively, like a deflating wineskin. The host is still trembling, the Priapus actor has vanished, smart, and the slave who spilled the garum? Gone. Dragged away by two guards who definitely weren't just following orders. But here's the thing about Roman parties, the show must go on. A snap of fingers, and new slaves emerge with fresh wine, stronger perfume. The lyre starts up again, too cheerful, as if nothing happened. Because in Rome, nothing did. The emperor's whims are like summer storms, brutal, fleeting, and never to be discussed after. Now, let's talk about the real stars of the evening, the food. You'd think this was just about oysters and figs, right? Wrong. Roman aphrodisiac banquets were psychological warfare on a plate. Mainstream fact, the wealthiest hosts served live mussels, still squirting in citrus brine, because if it moves, it must work. Spoiler, it didn't. But the quirky detail? Some dishes were pure performance. Like the infamous vulva veneris, a honey-drenched pastry shaped like, well, use your imagination. Guests were encouraged to eat it with gusto while making eye contact with someone across the room. Historians still argue whether this was foreplay or just ancient trolling. And then, oh gods, a slave kneels beside you with a silver platter. On it, a single dormouse, glazed in honey and stuffed with pepper. It's tiny. It's dead. It's looking at you. From the lady in the blue stola, the slave murmurs. You glance up. Across the room, a matron smirks behind her fan. Is this a gift or a threat? The honey-glazed dormouse stares up at you with its little dead eyes, and suddenly, you get it, this isn't food. It's a message. In Rome, even a snack can be a power play. Do you eat it and signal interest? Toss it over your shoulder like a barbarian? Pretend to swoon and hope someone carries you out? Before you can decide, the matron laughs, a sound like shattered glass, and turns away. Psychological warfare accomplished. Meanwhile, the party's energy is shifting. The couches are creaking more. The giggles are breathier. And over in the corner, two senators are definitely not debating tax reform. Time for your mainstream fact, the myth of Roman orgies as free-for-alls? Mostly propaganda. Real elite parties were choreographed. Every touch, every whisper, every bitten lip was calculated. The real orgy was the gossip the next day. Quirky tidbit? Some hosts hired professional witnesses, usually poets or freedmen, to document the scandalous stuff. Imagine a horny Roman TMZ. Historians still argue whether these reports were real or just ancient fanfiction. And then, oh no, you feel a hand on your ankle. It's the host. His pupils are huge. You've been very quiet, he purrs. Let's fix that. He snaps his fingers. A slave steps forward with a leather strap. Wait. What? The leather strap dangles from the slave's fingers like a sleeping snake, limp, but loaded with potential. Your host's grin widens as he drags a fingertip along its edge. Persian silk, he murmurs. Softer than a sigh, unless you pull it taut. Your throat goes dry. This isn't an invitation. It's a test. Here's the mainstream fact you're clinging to like a life raft. Romans didn't invent BDSM, but they institutionalized it. The legi's sumptuary, luxury laws even regulated how much you could spend on pleasure slaves trained in specialized services. Caligula, being Caligula, ignored the limits and bought a literal torture chamber decorated with mother-of-pearl. Subtle. Now for the quirky tidbit that'll haunt your dreams. Some aristocratic women wore volupta singula, pleasure belts studded with tiny bells that tinkled with every step. Historians still argue whether these were fashion statements, marital aids, or early prototypes for Find My Location tracking. Husbands in Pompeii's graffiti definitely had opinions. Back to the strap. The host loops it slowly around his palm. We'll start light, he croons. Unless you'd rather negotiate? This is where you realize consent in ancient Rome was as layered as their infamous lasagna. The slave holding the strap? They have no say. The guest being offered it? Your refusal could mean anything from laughter to exile. You open your mouth. When a scream shreds the air, everyone whirls toward the courtyard. There, sprawled in the fountain, is a woman in a torn stola, her hair plastered to her face. He tried to drown me, she gasps, pointing at a red-faced equestrian. The host sighs like this is a mild inconvenience. Livia, must you interrupt? The party pauses, not out of concern, but annoyance. And you? You're realizing the real danger here isn't the strap. It's the boredom of people who think consequences are for other people. The dripping woman, Livia, hauls herself out of the fountain with the dignity of a half-drowned cat. Her kohl runs in inky rivers down her cheeks, and her gold arm cuffs clank ominously as she points at the equestrian. "He promised me a pearl necklace," she hisses. Turns out he meant strangulation. The room holds its breath. This isn't just a lover's spat, it's theater. And in Rome, drama is the only currency that never devalues. Your host pinches the bridge of his nose. "Marcus, did you really skip the foreplay and go straight to attempted murder?" The accused equestrian, Marcus, splutters into his wine. "She bit me first." He yanks down his tunic collar to reveal a crescent-shaped wound. "Look, like a demonic hair." Livia sniffs. "You tasted like garum and bad decisions." Mainstream fact time: Roman courts did prosecute assault if the victim was high status enough. But most domestic disputes were settled with hush money or very creative revenge. See, Empress Messalina allegedly executing a lover for premature performance issues. Now, the quirky tidbit you'll never unsee: wealthy Romans sometimes employed ornithopsculi, bird watchers, to stand outside bedrooms and mimic nightingale calls to cover up incriminating sounds. Historians still argue whether these were actual birdsong experts or just slaves with really awkward resumes. The host claps sharply. "Enough. Marcus, compensate Livia with actual pearls." "Livia, stop trying to eat your suitors." "Everyone else?" He gestures to the still dangling leather strap. "Back to business." But just as the tension thickens again, a horn blares outside. Not the Emperor's trumpets this time. Deeper. Darker. The host pales. Lupa's teeth. The Vigiles. Rome's night watch just crashed the party. And their torches are already lighting up the street like a damn execution parade. The pounding on the door shakes the entire villa, not the polite rap-rap of a late guest, but the boom-boom-boom of armored fists that mean business. The host's face drains a color faster than a wine cup at a frat party. Shit. They brought the heavy cohort. Livia, still dripping, grabs your arm. Her whisper is urgent: "The back bathhouse." Now. You weave through the chaos, couples scrambling to redrape tunics, slaves frantically snuffing out incense, because nothing says innocent dinner party like a haze of opium-laced myrrh. Someone's wine spills across the mosaic, turning a mosaic Venus's face into a drunken smear. Mainstream fact: the Vigiles were Rome's firemen, technically. But by night, they moonlighted as the world's most corrupt vice squad. Their real job? Shaking down party hosts for stipendium quietus, quiet money. Fail to pay, and suddenly your respectable gathering is front-page news in the Acta Diurna gossip scrolls. Quirky tidbit? Some Vigiles carried sponges soaked in vinegar to sober up arrested patricians for an extra fee. Historians still argue whether this was actual detox or just performance art to justify higher bribes. You're halfway to the bathhouse when a hulking Vigilis blocks the hallway, his helmet askew. "You." He jabs a finger at your chest. "You look suspiciously sober." Livia steps between you, her wet stola slapping his shins. "Darling, he's clearly a eunuch. Look at those soft hands." The Vigilis squints. "Are you a eunuch?" Your mouth opens. Crash. A naked senator barrels into the Vigilis, knocking him flat. "Run," he yells over his shoulder, then trips on his own tunic and faceplants into a very surprised slave holding a platter of dormice. Livia doesn't hesitate. She kicks the dazed Vigilis in the groin, grabs your wrist, and sprints. The bathhouse door looms. Safety? Maybe. But behind you, the host's voice rises in negotiation. "Fine. 2 chests of silver, just burn the arrest scrolls." And then, oh gods, you hear the distinct sound of leather straps being unbuckled. Not the Vigiles. The host kept his toys. The back streets of Rome swallow you whole, alleyways so narrow you can taste the piss-soaked plaster as your shoulders scrape against walls. Livia's sandals slap against the uneven stones, her breath coming in sharp gasps. Left, she hisses, yanking you around a corner just as a vigilous torchlight floods the passage behind you. And then, there it is. A lopsided wooden door with a lupa, a she-wolf, carved crudely into its surface. The paint is peeling. The hinges are rusted. And the smell from inside, sweat, sour wine, and something suspiciously like burned honey, hits you like a punch. Livia doesn't knock. She kicks the door open and drags you into the dim, smoky chaos of Rome's most infamous brothel. Welcome to the real after-party. The brothel economy, where everything and everyone has a price. Mainstream fact time, prostitution wasn't just legal in Rome, it was taxed. The state even issued licenses to brothels, though this one seems to have skipped that step. But here's the kicker, while elite sex parties were all about power, brothels were brutally honest about their transactions. Prices were posted. Services were itemized. And no one pretended this was about love. A lupa named Drosis lounges on a stained couch, picking grapes off a plate balanced on her bare stomach. She sizes you up with the bored stare of someone who's seen every type of client. Another runaway aristocrat? She asks Livia. Or did you finally snap and murder your husband? Livia flips her off and collapses onto a cushion. Vigiles. Drosis snorts. Oh. The other city pest. She flicks a grape at your face. You look like you've never seen a cock stand before. You open your mouth. Relax. She grins. First time's free. The professionals versus the amateurs. Quirky tidbit? Brothel workers hated elite clients. Why? Because patricians overcomplicated everything. A lupa named Lyde, her hair dyed aggressively blonde with pigeon dung, leans in. Last week, some senator's son paid me to pretend I was his sister. She rolls her eyes. Then he cried. Then he threw up. Then he paid me extra to never tell anyone. She licks honey off her fingers. I told everyone. Historians still argue whether brothels were happier than marriages. At least here, the prices were negotiable and the promises expired at dawn. The walls have eyes, and numbers, and instructions. You glance around. The walls are covered in graffiti, not just crude doodles, but shockingly detailed reviews. Asterisk Felix gives terrible head. Paid 5 asses. Regret 10 tenths. Asterisk. Try position number 9 with Callista. Worth the extra denarius. And, ominously, beware the dormouse. Drosis follows your gaze. Oh, her. She points to a tiny, fierce-looking woman in the corner sharpening a knife. She bites. The dormouse woman winks at you. The morning after, for those who survive. The vigiles don't come here. Not unless they're off-duty and very drunk. But as dawn creeps through the cracks in the roof, the loopies start herding stragglers out. Livia is long gone, probably halfway to her third husband's villa by now. Drosis tosses you a stale loaf of bread. Eat. You look like death. You bite into it, immediately regret it, and spit out a pebble. She cackles. Welcome to Subura, sweetheart. Outside, Rome is waking up. The bakers are shouting. The fishmongers are haggling. And somewhere, a senator is pretending last night never happened. You step into the light. Just as a vigilis on donkey patrol squints at you. You. Oh, for fuck's sake. The vigilis grip on your arm is like iron, warm and sweaty and unpleasant in a uniquely Roman way. But just as he opens his mouth to drag you off to whatever dank cell awaits, a shadow detaches itself from the brothel doorway. Problem, officer? The voice is smooth, like honey laced with hemlock. The vigilis freezes. His grip loosens. A lady Epicharis. I didn't realize. Clearly. The woman who steps into the light is not what you expected. No gaudy silks, no dripping jewels, just a plain white stola and a knife-sharp smile. This one's mine. The vigilis pales. He drops your arm like it's on fire. Of course. My apologies. And just like that, you're free. Epicharis doesn't wait for thanks. She's already walking, her sandals clicking against the cobbles. Keep up, she tosses over her shoulder. Unless you want to explain to the Emperor why you were fraternizing with plebs. The underground, where Rome's queer heart beats. Mainstream fact, Rome tolerated same-sex relationships as long as you followed the rules. A senator could bed a young male slave publicly, but if he enjoyed being penetrated, that was infamia, social suicide. Quirky tidbit? Some Senini, gender non-conforming men, formed secret sodalities, drinking clubs where they could be themselves without fear. Historians still argue whether these were early queer safe spaces or just really niche frat houses. Epicharis leads you down a hidden staircase, below the streets, below the sewers, into a cavern lit by flickering oil lamps. The air is thick with saffron and salt and the musky scent of bodies pressed too close. A lyre plays somewhere, its melody too fast, too frantic, like it's trying to outrun the moans echoing off the damp walls. Nero's shadow, the golden orgy boat, maybe? Epicharis smirks at your wide eyes. Not what you expected, is it? A naked man draped in gilded chains saunters past, trailing petals. A woman in a phallus-shaped headdress toasts you with a questionable cocktail. Rumor says Nero built a pleasure barge with rooms for every sin, Epicharis murmurs. I say he just repurposed his mother's funeral ship. Tasteless, even for him. Historians still argue whether the boat existed or was just really good propaganda. But someone burned a very expensive ship on the Tiber around that time. The power of performance. A freedman in coal-lined eyes grabs your wrist. You. New stunt cock for the elephant act? You choke. Epicharis laughs. Relax. He's joking. Probably. The freedman winks. Unless you're into that. The dawn of consequences. The lamps are guttering out. The lyre has stopped. Epicharis pushes you toward a side tunnel. Go. The Vigila's chain shifts at sunrise. You stumble into the light, alone. Rome stretches before you, golden and cruel. Somewhere, a slave is scrubbing wine off a mosaic. Somewhere, a matron is lying to her husband. And you? You're alive. For now. The first thing that hits you isn't the smell of sulfur from nearby Vesuvius, though that'll become relevant later. No, it's the sound. Tap. 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 A slave boy, no older than 14, is carefully chiseling into the freshly whitewashed wall of a Pompeian brothel. His tongue pokes out in concentration as he etches. Here Lucilius came 3 times and still failed to please anyone. 1S rating. Would not recommend. He steps back, admires his work, and grins like he's just won the Olympics. Welcome to Rome's original social media, where the walls talk back, and they're savagely honest. The graffiti game, ancient shitposting at its finest. Mainstream fact, over 11,000 graffiti fragments survive in Pompeii alone. About 40% are sexual. Not love poems. Not subtle hints. Just straight up. Secundus fucks good, House of the Cytherist. Phileros is a bottom, Lupanar brothel, room 7. And the iconic. We 2 dear men have never harmed anyone except those who've harmed us. Suck on that. Bar of Astalis and Pardalis. Quirky tidbit? Some gladiator groupies would update their favorite fighters' stats weekly. Archaeologists found 3 conflicting measurements for one Celadus the Thracian, each more generous than the last. Historians still argue whether this was wishful thinking or performance anxiety in chalk. The Brothel Yelp Reviews, Unfiltered Edition. You duck into the Lupanar, Pompeii's most famous brothel. The walls here aren't just decorated with graffiti. They're laminated in it. A lupa named Myrtis lounges beneath her own 5-star review. Myrtis, Greek, 5 denarii, knows 12 ways to make you weep. Worth it. She catches you reading and winks. That one's old. I'm up to 15 ways now. In the corner, a very drunk merchant is arguing with the madam, but Felix's review says he Felix retired last winter, the madam snaps. His replacement is Terentius. She jerks a thumb at a bored-looking youth carving his name over Felix's. Ah, the Yup effect. The slave revolt of penmanship. Back outside, you spot something rare. My master thinks he's a lion in bed. More like a sick kitten. Carved by his own slave, Marcus. A risk. A death sentence if caught. But Marcus isn't done. Beneath it, fresh letters appear. Update, he saw this. I'm hiding in the latrine. Worth it. Historians still argue whether slaves meant for these to survive, or if they knew Pompey's plaster would fossilize their spite for eternity. Vesuvius' ironic punchline. The ground rumbles faintly. No one notices. A patrician storms past, red-faced, scrubbing at his wall. Hermes owes me 20 denarii for lying about his stamina. The slave boy from earlier giggles and starts new graffiti. The earth shakes when Hermes finishes too. You should leave. But as the ash begins to fall, one last message catches your eye, fresh, gleaming in the dying light. Whoever reads this, tell them we laughed until the end. And somehow, you believe them. The smell hits you first, charcoal and melted wax and something darker, sweet rotten like figs left too long in the sun. You round a corner into the Forumborium and... oh! A bonfire roars where the statue of Priapus once stood. Not that you can tell it was him anymore. Just a mangled stone torso, the remains of his infamous attribute now a blunt stump in the flames. A man in a rough spun tunic, too plain to not be making a statement, chucks a glass vial into the fire. It shatters, releasing a puff of musk that makes the crowd cough. Behold, he shouts. The devil's perfume turns to ash. The crowd murmurs. A woman sobs. Someone in the back yawns. Welcome to Rome's awkward phase, where Christianity hasn't quite won but is really committed to killing the vibe. The Purge, sponsored by guilt. Mainstream fact, when Emperor Constantine converted in 312 CE, he didn't immediately ban orgies. Smart man. Baby steps. But by 389 CE, Theodosius outlawed pagan rituals, including the Bacchanalia, and suddenly, everyone was very concerned about their neighbor's bedroom habits. Quirky tidbit? Some entrepreneurial Romans rebranded aphrodisiacs as medicinal tonics. That oyster stew? Oh no, sir, this is for, lung health. Historians still argue whether the church actually bought this, or just taxed the hell out of it. The last orgy, because drama never dies. A hand grabs your elbow. Pissed. It's Livia, older now, her kohl smudged, her stola faded. But her grin is the same. They're having one last party, she whispers. In the catacombs. Bring wine. You should say no. You don't. Catacomb confessions. The stairs down are slick with mold and old blood. The air is thick with damp and desperation. And the sound. Oh, the sound. I am echoes from one tunnel, praise be to God. A moan answers from another, praise be to that. Livia snorts. Schismatics. In a side chamber, a dozen figures huddle around a single lamp. They're not young. Their jewelry is tarnished, their makeup smeared. One man clutches a tiny bronze Priapus like a lucky charm. We remember, a woman hisses, passing a cup. We remember when Venus was more than a sin. A former Lupa, Drosis, her blonde now gray, laughs. She still is. Just costs extra now. Historians still argue whether these secret gatherings preserve Roman sexuality or just turned it into forbidden fruit. The morning after, the real end of an era. Dawn creeps in like a guilty lover. The catacomb empties. The hymns grow louder. Livia presses a cold coin into your palm, old, minted with Caligula's face. For luck, she says. Then, run. You do. Behind you, a priest screams about damnation. Ahead? A new Rome. A colder Rome. A Rome where desire didn't die, The flicker of your phone screen cuts through the darkness as you scroll. Another gladiator thirst trap, another influencer in a historically accurate, it's not, toga draping themselves over a, definitely not period appropriate, chaise lounge. The algorithm knows what you want. The algorithm always knows. Somewhere in Rome, a tourist stumbles over the uneven stones of the Forum, their sandal catching on a paving slab worn smooth by 2,000 years of footsteps. The guide drones on about emperors and empires, but the tourist isn't listening. They're too busy texting their partner back home. You wouldn't believe the horny graffiti here. Nothing changes. Everything changes. The tools are different. The hungers are the same. A senator once paid a poet to immortalize his prowess in verse. Now a tech bro pays an OnlyFans ghostwriter to make his DMs sound suave. A Pompeian brothel worker once rolled her eyes at a client's original move. Now a camgirl stifles a laugh at a subscriber's unique request. The vigilas once took bribes to look the other way. Now moderators wink at terms of service violations for a cut of the profits. Historians still argue whether we've evolved or just rebranded the same old sins with better lighting. Your thumb hovers over the like button. Somewhere, a stone priapus laughs in the dark. The glow of your screen fades as you finally set your phone aside, the weight of centuries pressing gently against your eyelids. Outside your window, the modern world hums, car engines instead of chariot wheels, streetlights instead of oil lamps. Yet the whispers of ancient Rome still curl through your thoughts like incense smoke. You think of the slave who carved his truth into wet plaster, never imagining it would outlast empires. The lupa who laughed as she counted her coins, knowing desire would always be currency. The terrified revelers in those final catacomb parties, clinging to pleasure as their world crumbled. How little has truly changed. The same hungry glances across crowded rooms. The same carefully crafted facades. The same desperate, human need to be remembered if only as graffiti on the walls of time. As sleep finally claims you, one last thought floats to the surface. Those Pompeians didn't know the ash would preserve them mid-laugh, mid-lust, mid-lie. We never know which moments will fossilize. The fan whirs. The sheets settle. Somewhere, 2,000 years away, a bronze wind chime shaped like priapus tinkles in a midnight breeze. The wind down lingers on that thought, the eerie echo of Rome and our modern obsessions, before fading into the quiet hum of your fan, the weight of your blankets, the distant sound of a car passing outside. The script ends as it began, with you in the dark, history whispering in your ear, and the unshakable sense that human nature never really changes. Sleep well. Or don't. The ghosts don't care either way.
The quiet settles around you now, heavy as a Roman cloak. Centuries collapse like folding chairs. Caligula's sneer lives in a CEO's smirk. A Pompeian sex worker's eye roll mirrors a camgirl's exhausted laugh. The clink of ancient bribes rhymes with modern hush money. You curl deeper under blankets, the past pressing its forehead to yours. We never outran them, you realize. Not the hunger for touch, the performance of power, the way we carve "I was here" into walls or timelines. Even the ash is the same, Vesuvius fallout just slower now, a scrolling doom we swallow in pixels. A car alarm wails outside. Somewhere, a phone buzzes with a notification, another body trying to say, "See me," across the void. The last candle gutters. Sleep comes. Rome doesn't.